It was an exciting year for the UConn Huskies in 2024. Jim Mora did an incredible job coaching, and it's time to repeat that success if they can. That is, this is a team that surprisingly finished 9-4, and this is a team that is expecting to do that. And with the top 10 players that we'll talk about today, they believe that they can probably do that again. We'll take a look at those players. We'll look at the schedule and talk about what needs to happen for them to repeat that success. If you're looking to have a good season, everything starts with the quarterback position. Joe Fagnano is going to be one of the more interesting quarterbacks in college football, and he's a guy that a lot of people don't really know. When you look at his numbers, some of them are rather pedestrian, but at the same time, threw for 20 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. This is someone who took care of the football, has a really interesting frame at 6'4", 225 pounds. If you're looking for someone, if he can take a step as a passer, has the frame to potentially be a really interesting NFL prospect. Not saying he's going to be there, but this is someone who could be at that point. When you throw 20 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, people are going to notice. People will notice what you're doing. And this is a passing attack that, while they did lose quite a bit of talent, they also returned some really interesting pieces. He is just going to be the guy that distributes the ball to them. And he is someone that maybe could be a really interesting prospect, like I said, at the end of the year. Not going to be the best runner, but if he can, again, take that step as a passer, the rushing attack is in a good place. He has the benefit of that. So he's going to benefit from that because he'll be able to find guys open. The rushing attack will take away from some of the pressure from him. And he's someone who I think can take another step. I think we have yet to see the best in him. And if you look at what he did last year, if he takes a step on that, this is going to be a really exciting year for this offense. Now, the rushing attack that we mentioned before, Cam Edwards is going to lead the way. Nearly rushed for 900 yards last year. He's looking probably for a 1,000-yard season, though he will share the backfield. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But nearly average 6 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. I think that he is a really underrated running back in college football. Not a lot of people are going to talk about him, mostly because of the lack of success in the past for UConn. They don't really want to discuss what's going on with the Huskies. Jim Mora, like I said, did an incredible job of getting this program to 9 wins last year, and he has the talent to be able to make that happen again. Cam Edwards is going to play a big role in that. The rushing attack was really good for this program. When you look at what Cam Edwards was able to do in terms of running the football, this is a team that finished 21st in the country in rushing. So they know what to do. They know how to run the football. And it's going to start with Cam Edwards. And again, if he can continue doing that, that makes the passing attack even better. Before we continue with the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and take a look. It takes a couple of seconds. It helps the channel grow. We've seen tremendous growth in the last couple of years, and we'd like to keep that going. Doing a giveaway at 10,000 subscribers, so we're hoping to hit that goal this year, and you make that happen. But let's get back to the video. The offense feels like it's in good hands, but the defense is probably a different story. When you look at the front seven specifically, they lost quite a bit of talent to the NFL, the transfer portal, graduation. But one guy they brought in is Taekwon King. Taekwon King comes in from Temple, had a big year for the Owls. Now, granted, the Owls did not have a good season, finished 3-9, but at Temple last year, 112 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. When you have to make that many tackles, obviously it speaks to the lack of success that your defense is probably having. But this is a guy who knows how to make plays. And whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, UConn needs a playmaker at the linebacker position. You lost, like I said, a ton of talent. This defense did a pretty good job for the Huskies last year, and now they have that important core that they need to replace. That won't be easy, but Taekwon King is one of those guys they bring in from the portal to replace some of that talent, and they brought in another guy that we'll talk about in a little bit, but they did a really good job of replacing that talent where they may not take a huge step back. When we entered 2025, Skylar Bell was a guy that we kept an eye on in terms of portal watch, and unfortunately for a lot of teams, they were keeping an eye on players that could enter the portal, and Skylar Bell actually did enter the portal. He eventually withdrew his name, comes back to UConn, and finds himself in a much bigger role than he was last year. TJ Sheffield is gone. Josiah Gathings is gone. You're losing some talent that are going to be missed, but a guy like Skylar Bell has the talent to make up for that lost production. 50 catches for 860 yards, 17.2 yards per catch. This is a guy who can stretch the field. Pretty decent frame, 6 feet, 185 pounds. Also added his 5 touchdowns there. He is going to be a big reason why Joe Fagnano is going to have a big year on top of the rushing attack helping him. He has good talent out wide. He has the ability to find those guys downfield, and Skylar Bell has proven that he can make plays. They also bring in some interesting players in the transfer portal. Romello Murphy comes in from Arizona. Caleb Burton comes in from Auburn. So there's plenty of talent available. It's just going to be a question who is going to be the guy that helps Skylar Bell the most. We talked about that rushing attack, and obviously Cam Edwards deserves a lot of love for what he does, but they have a really good 1-2 punch, and even maybe a 1-2-3 punch. Mel Brown is going to be the next guy up, 118 rushes, 673 yards, again, nearly 6 yards per carry. This is a really good tandem in the backfield. You looked at what this team's had in the past. A guy like Victor Rosa was a contributor in the past as well, but Mel Brown and Cam Edwards put them in a really good spot. They know that they're going to run the football. The offensive line feels like it's in a decent spot as well, but it's the running backs that truly make that happen. Again, if they're able to continue their success from what we saw this year, the passing attack will thrive. The rushing attack will continue doing what they're doing. And UConn, if they put everything together, especially with the schedule they have, you could be looking at guys in the backfield, 2 guys that could push 1,000 yards. The Huskies defense did a really good job last year. It's a big reason why they were successful. They took a lot of their numbers from the previous year and the year before where they struggled, and they improved upon those. It wasn't these drastic leaps, but they made progress each of those years. And last year, the passing attack finished 60th in terms of pass defense, but they can get even better this year. And a guy like Cam Chadwick will play a big role in that. Now, they do have some players they need to replace, but Cam Chadwick is going to be one of those guys that comes back. Had plenty of experience last year, 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 6 foot, 185 pounds. You feel like he's in a good position to continue to build off that success that he had last year. And again, this defense with the front 7 needing to replace so much talent, the secondary might actually have to step up, help a little bit more early on until those new guys get familiar with each other or those fresh faces are able to step up and play their roles. Another guy to keep an eye on, Malachi McLean, the safety, is going to, again, we talked about that secondary. They need to play a role. Malachi McLean could play a bigger role this year. Didn't have any interceptions, but this is a guy who is definitely capable of making plays on the ball. It's really interesting to see what Jim Mora has done because this is a program that offensively and defensively was kind of considered a bye week for a long time. And Jim Mora, when you win 9 football games, you don't do that by accident. The defense played a role. The pass defense played a role. And guys like Malachi McLean are a reason why. Now they return. Again, even with some of the players that they lose, you feel like you have a good core in place that can continue the culture, continuing setting those expectations for the new guys, and then kind of figuring everything else from there. We talked about a linebacker before, another linebacker coming in, Brian Parham, the former San Jose State and Washington transfer. Things didn't work out at Washington like he thought they would. Now he comes to UConn after a disappointing year and he's looking to prove himself. And this is a guy in 2023 at San Jose State was a natural playmaker. He was a big time playmaker, and the Spartans, I know, were sad to see him go. Now he comes to UConn to take over one of the linebacker positions. Again, they need someone to step up. Brian Parham could be one of those guys. 106 tackles 2 years ago, 5 tackles for loss. He is a little bit undersized, but he is someone who's going to fly all around the field. He is someone who can make big plays. And with this defense needing to replace so much talent up front, he's exactly what they need. An underrated target for Joe Fagnano and even Sneak Evers, one of the two, whoever it's going to be. It feels like Fagnano, based off the stats that we saw, Lewis Hansen is going to fly under the radar. 6'5", 240 pounds. The tight end probably doesn't get enough recognition for what he did last year. And granted, his numbers aren't anything crazy, but this is someone, if you're looking for a breakout candidate, he could be it. A lot of people are going to focus on Skylar Bell. We talked about some of the talent coming in from the transfer portal. Lewis Hanson is one of those guys that could fly under the radar because teams aren't really paying attention to him. And he's got a frame where you feel like you maybe put him in some favorable one-on-one matchups and seeing if UConn's offense can exploit that. And then finally, another wide receiver to pay attention to, another target downfield, is Shamar Porter. This is someone who is looking to take on a bigger role after last year. Only had 6 catches, but 3 of those catches went for touchdowns. He averaged nearly 19 yards per carry. Now, again, it's easy to take that and think, oh, we'll just expand that into more production and it's going to be a monster year. Obviously, he still has to do that. But this is someone, I think that he's capable of doing it when you look at the limited sample size. A good frame at 6'3", 210 pounds. Again, everybody is going to really pay attention to Skylar Bell and what he is doing. We talked about Lewis Hanson, but Shamar Porter is someone who, if you're looking for another breakout candidate, he could be that guy. He is someone who has the ability, has the raw tools to make that happen. And again, if this passing attack takes a step, you feel really good about where UConn is this year. Finally, we look at the schedule, and the schedule is really interesting because there's a lot of winnable games for the UConn Huskies, and there's some games that we really need to discuss about whether they go one way or another. There's not an over-under set right now for UConn at any sportsbook that I could find. I think that it's going to be set at 7.5. I feel like UConn, to the books, probably maybe they think that they're going to take a step back. But honestly, when I look at this schedule, if you build off the momentum, and a lot of that, I think the front seven having some questions is going to be a big factor. But the ceiling for this team is 10-2. And the games that are questionable, if you will, you look at the trip to Syracuse in the second week. You look at the trip to Boston College halfway through, hosting Duke. Those are 3 games that you would probably, if you're picking games that they for sure would lose, those are probably the 3 easiest ones for you to pick off. But if UConn is playing at the level that I think they're capable of, one of those could be an upset. Syracuse has a ton of change. They're going through a new quarterback. It's early in the season. We've seen upsets before. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's how they get to 10-2 is they pull off an upset at Syracuse, at Boston College, at home versus Duke. Maybe that one of those is going to happen, but that's how they get to 10-2. Now, if things don't go well and they lose all 3 of those games, and again, it really depends on certain pieces. Who's going to be that other guy that steps up in the passing attack? Can the quarterback position be consistent again? Can the rushing attack continue carrying the work like they did last year? 7-5 to me is really the floor, which is pretty good for a UConn team. Maybe you could say 6-6, but you look at some of these other games. Buffalo is a team that should be much better than they were last year. Who knows what Air Force is going to be? FAU could be much better. But again, 7-5 is if everything goes wrong. 7-5 is they don't know how to play football in certain games, and they're not even close in those 3 Power 4 games. So UConn is definitely an interesting team once again in 2025. The schedule appears fairly favorable for them to win more football games. And if they're getting back to 9 or even maybe 10 wins, this is going to be a program that people are talking about a lot more.